Imagine watching a spectacular performance at SeaWorld wherein trainers performing several stunts with a full-size whale. Then, all of a sudden, you witness the gruesome murder of the trainer by that same whale. Today I want to convince you how SeaWorld is turning the magnificent orcas into actual killer whales. After watching the documentary of Blackfish on the National Geographic channel, I became aware of the effects that SeaWorld has upon the largest member of the dolphin family. As we go to these parks that exploit killer whales like circus performers, we forget about the fact that they belong in the wildlife because we are so amused and entertained. Orca whales are becoming aggressive and in turn injuring or even killing the trainers at SeaWorld because of their confinement, stress, and frustration. Orca whales are known as magnificent performers, but they are also known as killer whales. According to MSNBC News, we're going to make any changes we have to make sure this doesn't happen again. Chuck Tompkins, chief of animal training at SeaWorld Park, said, "A day after a 12,000-pound male killer whale named Telecom dragged an experienced whale trainer, 40-year-old Don Branco, into its pool and thrashed the woman to death as audience members watched in horror. This only demonstrates the immense harm that these wild animals can inflict upon confinement, frustration, and stress." Orcas, also known as blackfish, are linked to their enormous size and weight. As stated by the Australian Government Department of the Environment, adult male and female killer whales are toothed whales that can grow up to 23 to 32 feet and weigh up to about 6 tons respectively. That being said, orcas require a great amount of space in order to swim and live naturally. SeaWorld orcas are kept cooped up in a swimming pool-sized area day and night. The department also indicates that killer whales travel 125 to 200 kilometers per day while foraging. The confinement SeaWorld performs on these immense whales only raises their aggression because of the lack of freedom they obtain. Aside from being trapped in a box, so to say, the blackfish are expected to perform their trainers' every command. As implied by the Blackfish documentary, for every well-completed performance, the trainers reward the whales with fish. Yet if the command is not well executed, then there is no reward for the hard-working orca who performs every day on the hour when the park is open. As for Telecom, who has been accused of killing 3 people in his lifetime, was not set free or let go by SeaWorld. On the contrary, SeaWorld has kept Telecom isolated in order to prevent any other incidents like the one involving the recent trainer's death. But this only makes the matters worse because as the killer whale is being deprived from food and kept in isolation, frustration is arising among Telecom as well as the other captivated whales who do not receive rewards for their obligations. Besides being captive and slaves to SeaWorld, some orca whales are also orphans because they are torn from their families and homes by hunters, simply for entertainment use. As demonstrated by the documentary of Blackfish, the hunting of killer whales includes the kidnapping of young calves from their habitat, as well as their family on site. The great Telecom was actually taken from his home at the age of 2. Now he is over 30 years old. Several years later, and most of his lifetime, he has spent his life captivated and forced to perform tricks without being able to swim freely. This definitely has caused a great amount of stress in the life of Telecom. and many others just like him. Although some do not even make it to the site because of the stressful operation. Young calves are snatched from their mothers and left on their own to fend for themselves. The marvelous and spectacular orcas at SeaWorld are becoming the killer whales. Their aggressive behavior towards the trainers leads to their injury or even death as a result of confinement, stress, and frustration. They are massive wild animals that belong in the ocean, which is their natural environment. The lack of space, food, and family manages to take control of the killer whale's instinct to attack. We have to stop keeping the orcas captive for entertainment and exploitation at SeaWorld and let them roam free in the ocean as they were born to do, like Mother Nature intended.
Baruch, are you here? You're not here, are you? Okay. Give me just a second here.
You want us just determine the written evaluation on Monday?
As soon as possible, yes. Okay, you've got a nice visualization at the beginning. Your point of view seems to be it's a cause-effect argument at first, and then later on there's kind of a policy claim that you're presenting here. I think there might be a stronger argument for the policy claim than the cause-effect relationship that you're trying to prove. You make this argument early on that the killer whales or the orcas are being turned into killers by their treatment at SeaWorld. And I think that the proof on that is a little bit thin. There are a couple of places where it's even contradictory. At the very end, for example, you've got a statement that you make that says, they have an instinct to attack. So if they have an instinct to attack, it doesn't sound like this is being created by SeaWorld. Rather, it's SeaWorld appears to be trying to manage it, and they're not doing a very good job of that. And that might be a different argument. The idea that they become aggressive because of the conditions in which they live, I think you give good reason to see why we would become aggressive, definitely. And I think that you've got some good information about the way the whales, the dangers. You do have that one example. Is it Tillamook, Telecom? Telecom. Okay. That you refer to. That seems to be, though, the one example that you come up with, and I don't know how many killer whales there are in captivity. I don't know how many perform in the shows, that sort of thing, and so we don't really get much except this one particular example. Maybe they've just got a bad whale, because if we're not getting the same kinds of activities from other orcas or killer whales that are involved in these performances and doing those kinds of things, then maybe it's not really the treatment of the whales, it just happens to be that particular animal. I thought that you did a nice job trying to find information to put into the speech. You had the quote from the person who apparently works at SeaWorld, talking about trying to do something to fix the problem. You do have information from the Australian Department of the Environment. I thought that was nicely cited in the presentation. The information about how far they swim every day in the wild, I think, needs to be cited. And the notion that they would become aggressive because they get a lack of exercise or lack of ability to work these things out, that seems to be a presupposition rather than something that's being presented. If it's a theory that's being presented in the movie that you refer to, then I think you ought to cite the movie in that particular case. It felt a little bit less organized than it ought to. I think it develops in a pretty straightforward way, so it's not that it's sloppy or disorganized. I just think that there could be a clearer structure for listeners to signpost as they go through. And I know you said that you felt a little under prepared. You did an okay job on the presentation. Probably a little more rehearsal would help. Unfortunately, that's not the circumstances that we're in, but you were probably better going today than worrying about it. Okay? Thank you.